Welcome back to Thimbleberry U. I am John Jagay, joined again by Amy Wallace from Thimbleberry Financial. Amy, last time we talked about some issues specific to the tech sector. Another area that I know you do a lot of work in is the medical field. And today, we're going to talk about doctors. And we've heard so much about doctors and medical professionals these last couple months and just the heroic things they've been doing. And now we want to do something for them and help them manage their money.
Yes, we do work a lot in healthcare, and gosh, they have been working so hard recently. And they do have financial planning issues specific to them and their industry.
So let's start right at the top. We're going to hit 5 of these today. What are the top 5 issues that physicians face when it comes to their money?
Yeah, I don't know if they're absolutely the top 5, but there are 5 that I think play a very big role. So first one would be that they start their careers late because of all that medical school.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And they may come out of it with debt and potentially quite a bit of debt. The second one would be that their incomes tend to be high. You know, we don't typically think of that as an issue, but it can be an issue. 3, their work is really quite specialized in many cases, and that has complications. And then 4 would be they have some unique pitfalls and opportunities around retirement savings.
Okay.
And 5's kind of a funny one, actually. It's that they're used to giving advice. And what that really means is that seeking advice can be foreign and uncomfortable to them.
That's an interesting point. I wouldn't have thought about that, but that makes a lot of sense. So we'll start with the first one, which is something that I think we all know about for medical professionals. If you go to school forever to be a doctor, you probably have a lot of debt. So student loan debt is an issue. And yes, they're making more money, but why is student loan debt still an issue?
You know, we've seen some younger physicians come in with debt loads of $200,000 to $400,000.
Wow.
That's in student loan debt. And it makes it hard for them to make decisions going forward, financial decisions going forward.
They're under a rock.
Absolutely. And life decisions. Do they get married? What does a prenup look like if they do that? I've even seen 2 physicians married where one has student loan debt and the other one doesn't. And that created some unique dynamics in their situation.
Sure.
And it makes it hard to decide, how do we move forward with buying a house? When do we have kids?
Yeah.
Right? And especially when you're in a couple and people have different views about debt, that can be a struggle. Another thing with that debt could be loan forgiveness. So, you know, there's this idea out there, and I'll call it an idea because it doesn't sound like it's coming to fruition all that often, that if you work for a nonprofit, that your student loan debt can be forgiven if you have the right kind of loan.
Mm-hmm.
But there are also student loans that if you have paid for a certain period of time, those can be forgiven.
Okay.
Or maybe your employer is looking at providing loan forgiveness. Okay, just like as part of your benefits package. They're saying we'll pay off so much student loan per year. That happens for physicians. So it can make it really hard to act because you're living in limbo, not knowing what will really happen and what's the best choice going forward. And there can be some tax consequences to that loan forgiveness.
Ah, okay.
So for example, if you work for a nonprofit and you've paid your student loans and your loans are forgiven after 10 years, that at this point does not create a taxable event if you can move through the system and get it forgiven. But if you have a loan where you've paid for 25 years and is forgiven as part of the loan, well, guess what? That forgiveness is actually counted as income in the year it was forgiven. So you may not have been making big enough payments, and that loan may be growing over those 25 years. And now your $400,000 just became $700,000 of income in that 1 year, and you have to have the savings to pay that tax bill.
That is something that I never would have thought of, but when you explain it, it makes a lot of sense. So the second issue we talked about is that their incomes tend to be high, which on the surface, as you said, doesn't sound like a bad thing, but it can make things a lot more complicated, right?
It can. One is because we know that physicians' incomes tend to be higher. A student may not worry as much about their debt load while they're going through school, right? Because they don't know at that point in their lives what the reality of buying a home and paying off student loans and having a family and all of these things are going to mean. So they may not be as careful. So the other thing is that doctors know a lot. clearly they're well educated. And it's expected that they know things, at least medical things. But one difference is, and this is a difference between our tech clients and our healthcare clients, is that our tech clients regularly have conversations in internal tools like, a Slack channel or something about money. Our healthcare clients don't have those same avenues at work to learn about money, right? And they don't have the same kinds of stock benefits and things where money is a standard topic. Their attention's on their patients.
Sure.
So that creates an issue where they're just not getting as much exposure to financial topics in their careers to learn about it. The other thing, though, is that with high income often comes high spending.
Yeah.
They've maximum funded their 401k. And once you've done that, that's the easy thing to do. Where else do you save? Well, if you don't have a place to save, what I know from experience is that most people tend to spend the money.
Right.
And doctors tend to have a certain lifestyle expectation.
Yeah, that's true. It's like the whole keeping up with the Joneses thing.
Absolutely. And non-doctors have it about doctors. So it's actually a topic that's discussed in Thomas Stanley's book, The Millionaire Next Door. We expect that because physicians are in a higher income category, that they will also be one of the wealthiest professions. But it's not the reality because of those expectations around spending. And the problem is once you have increased that spending, it's really hard to go backwards.
Yeah, to cut back. I mean, it's the whole age-old adage about, you make more, so you spend more. So you mentioned also earlier in these top 5 issues that physicians face, number 3 of the 5 is that their work is specialized. What's the issue there?
As a result of being specialized, they really have more of a need to protect their income and their ability to earn that income. Think about all of the reasons from a medical standpoint that a surgeon may not be able to do surgery. There's a lot that just quickly come to mind. It could simply be some sort of prescription they're on, right? That maybe makes them jittery for a while. It might be some other health condition. So there's a lot of things that could affect the income of someone who is that specialized. So because of that, they have a unique need to protect their ability to earn that income. And the best way to do that is with insurance. And not all insurance is created equal.
Sure.
Especially when it comes to income protection or disability insurance. I'll share, too, that, with that kind of specialization, it's also not inexpensive to protect that income, but probably necessary.
Okay, so you mentioned this earlier a little bit about, retirement planning with doctors. It's easy to max out the 401k, and then the question becomes, what happens after that? So what are the issues that doctors have with retirement planning, number 4 of the 5?
Yes. So it can be a great strategy to maximum fund that 401k at the annual limits each year. But when your income is higher, that means that by maximum funding, the percentage you put in is smaller than someone who has a lower income. And oftentimes the proportions, it's more about your savings rate compared to your spending that gets you on track for retirement. So that just means that there's a smaller percentage of their income that they can save into accounts like that. So then they have to look at where else they can save, and that's going to take more research and more knowledge. Another unique thing that happens is, and we have a research hospital here in Portland with another organization right next to it, and we often find that physicians will work for both organizations at the same time. And as a result, they may actually have more than one retirement plan available to them. So sometimes they can actually fully fund 2 retirement plans.
Okay.
Or they may have 3 plans available to them, but can only fund 2 of them. Which 2, if they're not fully funding them, which ones do they put more money into? It just raises questions about which of the plans to use, how much to contribute, how does that affect their cash flow? How does it affect their taxes in the future? Right? Because if you're putting pre-tax money in it, it creates a tax bill down the road after the money's grown. And then another issue that comes up with retirement planning is around deferred compensation plans. And I tend to see this more with anesthesiologists than other physicians.
Okay.
And that is that they're offered the opportunity to participate in a deferred compensation plan. Now, when you lift up the hood, I think I used that expression in our last podcast, and you lift up the hood and look under it, what we find is these are non-qualified deferred compensation plans. And I don't want to get, technical in here, but how it works is it's a way to defer income, much like you would in a 401k, right? You're not being taxed on it today, and you'll be able to draw off of it as an income stream in this case in the future. The problem with a non-qualified deferred compensation plan, unlike a 401k, is that money is not put into an account in your name. And that's how it avoids you being taxed on it. So it's not yours until the money actually pays out to you. So it's subject to the claims paying ability of the employer. So in healthcare, this hasn't seemed like too much of an issue in the past, but basically, Jag, it's the same thing as you saying, hey, look, I'll take a $20,000 pay cut this year in order to get that money in 5 years.
Okay.
But your employer then goes belly up, and that $20,000 doesn't come back to you even though you did the work.
It's gone.
It's gone.
That claims paying ability of the employer is not there.
Yes. So like I said, this hasn't been a big issue, but now we just had coronavirus.
And it's funny how we've seen a lot of hospital companies and other companies in financial trouble because they're not able to make the money off of those elective surgeries because their hands have been tied up with COVID.
And I mentioned I see these with anesthesiologists the most often, and anesthesiologists are one of the groups that because of those elective surgeries weren't working much.
Yeah.
So they just need to be really careful and look at all the options and how to tie it together, I think is my point.
Yeah, that is a really big one. Finally, and I thought this was interesting, our fifth and final point, that physicians are used to giving advice, but they might not be used to getting advice or even asking for advice, right?
That is very true. When you're used to giving advice, can be really hard to accept that and accept that you may not have all the answers, really. So you have to be willing to be vulnerable when you need to ask a question. And it's interesting because in our experience, what we have found is we have a different relationship with our practicing physicians versus those physicians that teach at the local teaching and research hospital.
How so?
The ones that are teaching and doing research, they actually do just in their communication on a regular basis ask a lot more questions. And I know this is anecdotal, but they're used to digging into what's driving something. Our practicing physicians tend to make a lot more statements and then just want us to step in and let them know where we need to steer them in a different direction or where maybe they have a misunderstanding about something.
Okay.
So it's interesting, and that's great. We can communicate both ways, but there's a distinct difference that we have noticed. Earlier, I mentioned that the wealth of a physician doesn't necessarily match the income of a physician, and that can be surprising to many people. It's not just to non-physicians that's surprising, but it's also to physicians.
Yeah.
So what there can be is some guilt or some shame in asking for help that maybe they haven't put themselves in the same position as their peers.
Okay.
But the reality is that their peers may not have really put themselves in the position that they're perceived to have put themselves in either.
If you're at a cocktail party, you're going to be very quick to talk about the new car. You're not going to be very quick to talk about having trouble making ends meet. Everybody tends to put their best foot forward and their best image forward, especially if, like we said earlier, we're worried about keeping up with the Joneses.
Absolutely. And social media definitely hasn't hurt us doing that. So I think my point here is just simply that, when your job is to tell people what they need to do, right? And you need to be confident in that as a physician. It's harder to step out of that and ask. It's kind of like acknowledging there may be symptoms or a prescription that you're not as familiar with.
It makes sense that a doctor who's used to giving advice all day might have a hard time asking for advice, but that's why you're here, Amy. So if a doctor listening, a healthcare professional, or anybody that needs help with their finances needs to reach you, what are the best ways to find you at Thimbleberry Financial?
Yes, they can give us a call, 503-610-6510, or send us a message through our website at thimbleberryfinancial.com.
And don't be afraid to call either. Amy would love to talk to you.
Absolutely.
Take care, Amy. We'll talk soon.
Sounds good, Jag. Thanks.
Registered representative. Securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer. Member FINRA, SIPC. Investment advisor representative. Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and Thimbleberry Financial are not affiliated. Cambridge does not offer tax or legal advice. Thimbleberry Financial is located at 650 Northeast Holiday Street, Suite 1600, Portland, Oregon, 97232.